Hiya, welcome back. This is video 2 of this series about how to create ebooks from Word and InDesign. So this video, we're going to jump right into InDesign using the Word file that we worked on in the first video. So if you have that handy and you want to follow along, please do so. I am going to share my screen and we will get underway. Okay. You don't need that. Okay, so this video is video number 2, as I said, and it's about setting up InDesign. There's going to be a couple of chunks of things on specifically InDesign. In this video, we're going to talk about master page items, semantics and threading, images and best practices for dealing with images, metadata, white space items, and page break markers. So, and you will get this Word file when you get the video. So you'll have access to the URL I have posted down here to a small script that's going to help you with some of the work. Alrighty, I'm going to move this to my other screen. I'll get underway. Okay, so here is my InDesign file. This is just a really basic InDesign file. Let's go to the document setup. It's I think it's 5.5 by 8.5 or some such thing, something like that. It's in picas right now. There's the margins, etc. I will move this over here and we'll have a look at the master pages. So it's just really a basic text frame. The master page has the folio on it. A quick caution, so I'm not going to put any, this is a really simple InDesign file. I'm not going to put any running heads or anything in there. But if you are using a long, complex InDesign file and you find you need to, so Shift, Command, click, and make one of those master page items live, like the folio or a running head or something similar, be aware that making those master page items live in the InDesign file means that it's going to come out in the Epub. So it's just important to be aware of that. So do it if you need to, but then be aware of how that's going to happen. So for example, I work on a lot of ebooks that are InDesign files that I inherit from elsewhere. And often with people who don't know the full range of what InDesign is capable of. And so they make the running head frame live on the page and delete the running head, say, on a chapter opener, but they leave that empty frame on the page. If I don't delete that before going to Epub, what happens is at the end of the thread that page is on, I'll get an empty div. So I'll get some junk code, basically. Everything that you make live on the page is going to come out in the Epub, and it's just worth being fully aware of that. I'm going to undo making that live because I definitely don't want a folio box to come out at the other end. Okay, so I have the styles. A couple things. I'm sitting in the typography orientation of InDesign. And again, as with the Word video, my version of InDesign might look slightly different than yours. I'm working on the most up-to-date version of InDesign as of January 2022. And this is how it appears. I have customized it a little bit to what I'm used to and what I want to see. And probably your version of InDesign is customized to what you want to see as well. And so things might look slightly different, but don't let that put you off from figuring out what's going on in this video. Okay, I have some really basic style sheets going on here. I like to keep this paragraph and character styles open, especially as I'm typesetting and reading things in. Okay, so first step is to read in that Word file that we worked on the other day. So I'm going to go over to here and wait, that's not it. It's this one. Okay, so holding down the Shift key, I'm going to click in the top left corner of this frame, and it should populate the whole thing. So it does. So it's all read in, and you'll see over here on the paragraph styles palette that there are a number of word styles that got read in. So whatever was present in the Word file gets pulled forward. And the word styles are marked with this funny icon here. So that you're clear about what's going on here. So one word style came in that has no name. Sometimes mysterious things happen when you bring a Word file, particularly a complex Word file, into InDesign. That Word file has a lot of competing interests going on, like the author who maybe over formatted it and sort of typeset their book in Word, and then it went to editorial, who tried to clean it up, but there's still a lot of fingerprints in that Word file that when you read it into InDesign, those things are going to show up. So that's fine. We'll deal with those in a minute. The main thing to look at here is that we're missing a font. So I think this wants to be a font called Last Resort, which I'm not sure is a font. We'll fix that in a minute. So don't worry too much about it. I'm going to just get rid of this header information because we definitely don't want that. Okay. So the heading 1 is the chapter number is mapped to something called heading 1. I already have some style sheets in here. So CN stands for chapter number, CT stands for chapter title. So here's what I'm going to do. You may already know this. This isn't totally salient to the Epub world, but I'm going to do some quick formatting. I'm going to delete this and replace it with the pre-existing style sheet named CN. So that worked. And then I'm going to, so this one is called title. I'm going to delete that and replace it with CT. Heading, this subhead, I think is formatted as heading 2. And I don't have any style sheets for the subheads. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this one. I'm going to take off that indent, which I definitely don't want. And I'm going to take off some of the space after. I think it's because I'm not sure why there's so much space after that one. Oh, I know why. It's because there's space before on that. So I'm just going to take that off and then redefine the style. So just like in Word, so let's look closely at what I did there. I have that heading 2 selected. The plus sign means that there is extra formatting overrides going on. So some what Word calls direct formatting and what InDesign calls style overrides. So a quick look at this little button here in the paragraph style palette. It's also in the character style palette down here. Clicking that button on means that anything that has direct formatting or style overrides will be highlighted. So see that has style overrides and it now has this turquoise on it. When I do this and say redefine style, so we're redefining heading 2 with the format. I also am still missing the font. So let me just go choose Minion Pro. There we go. And we'll do that again. So then that's not pink anymore. There's a little residual turquoise here, but I think it will go away. It went away. So we're golden. And then I'm going to rename this A head. So all you need to do to rename is to just sort of click in that title space. You can also, while that's held, go over here to there's lots of options in here. I thought there was a rename option. I must have been hallucinating. So there's lots of options in here. That's what you could do it with. Okay, so done. This first paragraph has the style sheet of no indent and it has space before, which is creating that large gap in between the header and the first paragraph. That's fine. Okay, so here is our italics. The best way to deal with italics, because a lot of manuscripts have a lot of italics, is to maybe search for them all and apply an italic style sheet, particularly if you're inheriting a Word file that hasn't been formatted properly within Word with styles. But because I know that this one I'm inheriting something that is well styled, I'm going to go into the M character style, and I'm going to just edit that and make it Minion Pro Italic. Great. Why did that not work? Because italic, what is going on here? I don't have a full version of Minion Pro opened, so I will open that in a minute. Here, SS Minnow, that's the italic style sheet. So I'll go in here and do something very similar. I may switch to a font that I have opened because this is Oh, Lord. There we go. So I'm going to make that Garamond Pro italic, and that will work. And I'll go over here and make that Garamond Pro italic as well. I don't recommend mixing fonts in a book, but luckily, this is not a typesetting demo. This is just a quick formatting demo. Okay, so great. So those italics are now done. The normal style sheet is being odd, so we'll edit that now too. Wait, did I? I did. Okay. We're going to edit the normal style sheet. We're going to make that Garamond Pro regular, and I'm going to make it justified. 11.5 on 16 is correct. This first line indent is a little bit much, so I'm going to make that 18 points instead of 3 picas, and then I will redefine the style. So that should get rid of, before I did that, let's look. So everything was a little bit wonky doodly, and once I do this, it fixes all of that. It inherits it. And so everything gets sort of smoothed out nicely. Okay, the one thing I want to look into is my little snippet of, I'm going to make this Garamond now too, just so it looks the same. And I will redefine that style and then fix this. There. Okay, where's my little snippet of French? Why can I not find it? Here it is right here. So that style sheet called French didn't come through. La deep sigh. What are you going to do? So I'm going to create a new character style sheet, and I'm going to call it French. There's going to be no styles associated with it, but I will map it to French so that when it comes out in the ebook, it will come out with the correct language declarations. Oh, so I did all that you saw, and then it didn't apply it because let's undo that for a second and do that again. French, advanced character formats, language, French, say okay. Oh, I did it again, darn it. Okay, bear with me. See, mistakes will be made. This is the button I want to have clicked on, apply style to selection. You all probably know this because you are seasoned InDesign users and you're going to watch my mistakes and laugh at me, but that's okay. So now it's applied correctly. Okay, so that's our quick formatting. I think the only other thing we need to do is this subhead, which I will quickly do. I won't even take off that space after by putting in a 0 instead of a hyphen. And then we're going to redefine that style and rename it. The formatting on this is not beautiful. We'll just deal with it for now. I think maybe making it bold would make a little bit of sense, or bold italic. Let's just go with bold and redefine that. Okay. So the other thing we can see here is that our folios have direct style formatting on them. I'm just going to go over here. Boy, picture of myself is getting in the way. I'm going to move it to the other screen. And I do have a style sheet for that, so I'll just apply it. I just must not have done that when I first did it. So we'll go back to these other pages, and the turquoise disappeared. Having this toggle button on is really helpful, especially if you're inheriting an InDesign file from somebody else and you need to see exactly how the typesetting was achieved. I used to work for a publisher that had a lot of buy-ins, and we got a lot of files from other places like England and Ireland and Australia. And the typesetting practices in InDesign from those various places in the world quite different than here. And having this toggle button turned on saved my bacon regularly. Okay, so I'm going to show you a few more things without digging into styles, which would be cannibalizing the next video. A few things to note. If you inherit an InDesign file that has tabs at the start of each paragraph, you'll want to get rid of those. There's a whole bunch of white space items that are not going to come out into the EPUB, and tabs are one of them. And tabs actually sort of do come out into the EPUB. They just come out as a little space, and it's a space that's going to actually get in the way of how your ebook functions in a Kindle context. It won't get in the way in any other reading system, but it will get in the way on Amazon, and you don't want those there. Similarly, double word spaces are going to get ignored in an EPUB. M spaces, N spaces, thin spaces. So under this, up here under white space, insert white space, every single one of these white space items will get ignored in an ebook context, with the notable exception of the non-breaking space. So the non-breaking space, see, I just put that right there at the start of the paragraph. A lot of people use these to put between the last two words in a paragraph to guarantee that there are no short lines at the bottom of a paragraph in a typesetting context, and that's fine. Just be aware that that non-breaking space is the only white space item that's going to come through into the ebook. Tabs, the various spaces, double spaces, etc., will not come through. So I convert a lot of poetry, for example, and poets love to use empty word spaces and empty paragraph returns to achieve spacing in a manuscript. Those things have to be rethought as coming from the style sheets instead of from empty white space items. So let's say you wanted a couple extra paragraph returns here between the paragraph, between this chapter title and the subhead. If you just put in empty returns like that, when you export to ebook, this will disappear. So then your spacing is going to be off. Avoid empty white space items with all of your being, particularly double spaces. They just won't work. Everything must come from a style sheet if you want it to hold true in the ebook. Okay. There are a number of what are called semantics built into InDesign. They are Epub type semantics. So let me just, with the arrow tool chosen and the first frame of this chapter also chosen, I'm going to go down to object and object export options. And I'm going to show you the plethora of really interesting things in this window. I don't think I can make this bigger, I'm afraid. So I hope that you can see that easily. There's a place for alt text. There's a place for making sure your structure in a tagged PDF context is correct. And then there's a place for controlling things that are happening in your EPUB and HTML. This is a rich window full of lots of things that I'm going to go through that make your life a little bit easier. So we have this frame. Oh, another hot tip is you don't have to close this window in order for things to be taken. You can just click off and then go to the next frame and it will open, with the important caution that threading breaks that. And I'll go through that a bit later in this video. So the first frame of chapter 1 is chosen. In here, these are what are called EPUB type semantics. Now, unfortunately, EPUB type semantics are essentially meaningless on most reading systems. I still use them because I use them to map to the more meaningful semantics, which I will go through in detail in a later video. But for now, I will counsel you that using EPUB type semantics is actually a really good idea. It really helps with thinking through the structure of your book, thinking through the sort of bones of your content, and applying semantics so that what comes out in the EPUB is sort of as well described as possible, particularly for people who are consuming the book with a screen reader or in some other alt way of getting at the content. So here, with this frame chosen at the beginning of chapter 1, there's a full set of EPUB type semantics built in here. You can go through this on your own time if you like. I would also counsel you to just use this very simply. So here I'm going to choose chapter because that's what this is. So we'll go through this later, but I will show you how that comes out in the EPUB. So that's marked the beginning of that chapter. Now, if we go down here to say the next chapter, Because this is threaded, you can see that when I select all, everything is highlighted, or when I do this and look at where things are, that's not what I want. I want to show the threading and I can't remember to do that. But anyway, this page here is, this page 11 is threaded to page 12. Epub type semantics work at an object level. So I could go in here and apply that Epub type semantics right here, but because it's threaded to the page before, it won't work. And this is where scripts come to the rescue. So I'm going to use this. This is a script called break text thread version. There are a couple of scripts in here. So if you're not used to using scripts, they're usually on the side panel, but if they're not there, you can always go and get them from Window, Utilities, Scripts. And then I just made mine disappear, so that was done. There's a whole bunch of scripts that InDesign ships with, and they're not all actually super useful. So they already have this split story script and this break frame script. Either of those scripts are going to break every single thread in your document, and that's not necessarily something you want. I just want to separate chapter 1 from chapter 2. So with this frame selected, I'm going to double click this break text thread version 1.0.jsx, and then this went on the wrong window, so I'll bring it back over here. I'm going to say break the thread before this text frame. And then, did it work? Usually I get a, okay, so let's try that script again. It's still threaded. This script is something I'm still getting used to. If I, with my cursor in the chapter 2, I'm going to opt for break thread before every frame with this paragraph style. So chapter number. And will that work? Oh, for crying out loud. I started my computer a while ago and it totally worked, and now it doesn't seem to want to work. Okay, just trust me that that script does work. I swear to you, I had it working earlier today. It doesn't want to work right now because of course, but it does work. And then separating that text thread means that that EPUB type semantics that I applied to the frame at the start of chapter 2 will hold in the ebook context. So should you go through and separate all the chapters? I would say yes, if you want to apply meaningful semantics. So let's just step back and talk about semantics for a minute. Semantics are a layer of instruction to the reading system that says what this is. So at the start of front matter, we can say, hey, here's the front matter by applying some EPUB type semantics there. When we hit a glossary or footnotes, those semantics are going to come in very handy just as an extra layer of information, particularly for screen readers. So EPUB type semantics and ARIA roles, which sounds like a scary word, but I will explain that later in the series. They are just another layer of meaning that is particularly useful in an EPUB accessibility context. So good idea to get into the habit of using EPUB type semantics. I'm going to, so this video 2 file is the one that we just created by reading that Word file in. I'm going to go over to a different InDesign file that I have that's a little bit more formatted. And I'm going to show you a little bit about what's going on here. So this file has some prelims. Oops, we do not want a folio on a blank page. That's for darn sure. Okay, so it's got a title page. It's got some facing page images at the start of the chapters. I've also put in a sidebar and some editorial breaks. And there's also a footnote. And then there's chapter 2 with similar things happening. So very simple content, not much going on. But let's talk a little bit more about semantics. So let's get rid of that folio there too. Yakaluk. Okay, this is the start of the front matter. So let's go into object export options and say, hey, you know what? This is the front matter. Let's designate it as such. This piece here, the title page, okay, there's two items on the page. There's the kind of the colophon and the title, the frame containing the title and the author. Those are grouped at the moment. A lot of the time when I make ebooks, this is not necessary, but I'm just going to explain what I do. I rasterize these things like the title page so that it retains the print design, and I turn it into an image. So by grouping those two frames, in this window, Object Export Options, I can ask it to rasterize the container. So that's a phrase that doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. I always think rasterized content makes a little bit more sense, but whatever. Rasterized container is what we're going to do. We're going to ask it to be a JPEG with kind of a high resolution because we want that type to be really crisp in almost every context. And then when I say done there, that means that this page is going to turn into an image in the Epub, which is great because this page uses a couple of fonts, this one here called Sheila, and this one down here called Dalliance, that aren't used anywhere else in the book. So then those fonts won't need to be embedded in the ebook. This is just a common practice that I do to turn these things into images. So the other really important thing that I want to show you is this. Let's go back to Object Export Options. We have that rasterized, so it's going to come out as an image. But rasterizing that means that that text is not live anymore. So let's go put some alt text in. So on this window, the alt text window, and choosing custom, we can go over here and say title page and type out what the text says so that this will look nice visually for sighted readers, but by putting some decent alt text in here, it is still available to non-sighted readers or people who are reading this in other ways by pretend books. So there you go. That's all you need to do. So then I turned that into an image, which feels like a violation of accessibility principles, but I put alt text in. So I think that we can call that kosher. Okay, another page down. Let's move that scripts thing and let's move this over here so we can see what's going on. So for the purposes of instruction, I put some images in this file. The images are in between non-threaded content. So you can see that this chapter 1 doesn't thread to the page before. If it did thread to the page before, then in order for so the way Epub works is it exports the whole thread and then it goes back and exports things that it might have missed. So if this page were threaded to the page before, I would need to anchor this image so that it came out where I want it to come out. Now let me highlight this a little bit. So anchoring means you're going to grab this little blue square at the top and drag it to where you want it anchored. So there's like a funny invisible that looks like a yen symbol right there. And that means that it's anchored. And if we go over and click on the image, you can see that it's anchored. I'm going to undo that because it's not threaded to the page before, so I don't necessarily need it anchored there. Because when this Epub is exported, it's going to export this, then it's going to come here and export that, and then to the next page, it's going to export that image and that caption, and then chapter 1. So we'll see all that in action in a little bit. So here's an image. Let's highlight this image. It has a frame on it. So it has a 4-point frame with 3 black key lines around it. I just want to note that for future, we're going to, in the next video, talk about using object styles to maintain that frame in the Epub context. And then there's a caption down here that's styled with a caption. This illustration 1 bit should be styled as small. I must have missed that. Pretend you didn't see that, okay? And then here, I want to highlight this piece as well. So when I found this image to put into this training file, I kept something on the pasteboard that shows where I got it from. And so whatever, why is that interesting? Well, if I want to describe this image, I may actually want to put this link into the alt text for this image here. I may not, but because it's on the pasteboard and because it's over here in the bleed, it doesn't matter. It's not getting in the way of anything. And I say this for a couple of reasons. When working on books for which you're commissioning illustrations, for example, the language that you use to commission the illustration is eventually going to make a really nice image description. And so preserving that language in the pasteboard means that it's there later when the ebook conversion person is getting this content ready to export to ebooks, and they can use it or not. Um, Almost all the InDesign files that I create from scratch are lousy with these kinds of things on the pasteboard because I want to save them. And I want to save them right next to the image so I know what this is relevant to, and I can use it if I want to. So as I showed you for the title page, we can go into object export options and create a image description. This has already been done. Line art, Captain Hook and Peter Pan from the 1911 edition. I would suggest that that's not a terrific image description. It doesn't really say what's going on in here, but it's a good start. So we could say, I think this looks like a woodcut, but I don't know for sure without going to that link and looking at it. But shipboard scene of Captain holding up a sword and threatening a small boy. It's a little bit better. There's still a lot going on and there's a lot more description that we could put in there, but that's slightly better than what it was before. Okay, I want to go down to chapter 2 and just demo this again. So eventually what I'm going to do is ask this ebook to break on the CN paragraph style, which means that because this image is just before the CN paragraph style, it's not going to come out where we want. It's going to come out at the end of chapter 1. So that's just something to be aware of and to be mindful of. I can fix that easily in the ebook and I will show you that later. That's something that's totally possible to do. All right, I want to go up here and show off this little sidebar. Okay, this is just a little bit of sidebar text. It doesn't necessarily make any sense, but we're going to keep it here just for demonstration purposes. One thing I want to show you in here is there's some italics that are formatted with the cite button, a cite style instead of an italic style, because we will map that to a different version of italics that's more semantically correct. So just worth noting. Now, in order to get this sidebar to come out in the right spot, we're going to need to anchor it. At present, what will happen is chapter 1 will export as HTML and the sidebar will come out at the end. And we can move that around in the HTML, but if editing HTML makes you nervous, then by all means do this. It's now anchored to the end of that page, end of this paragraph here, and it will come out just after it. Now you saw that when I anchored it, what happened is some of the text runaround didn't work. And this speaks to a larger issue that I can talk about right now. When I get content ready for Epub export, I often dupe the InDesign file so that so I can work on a version of the content that I don't have to worry about messing up the layouts. So assume that the InDesign file is final. There's no more changes going to happen to it. I dupe it so that when I do things like anchor that sidebar and the runaround doesn't work properly and there's a little bit of reflow, I don't care a ton because this is just for EPUB. This is not for print. This is not for PDF. It's only for EPUB. And so sometimes if things don't look perfectly well in the EPUB, but you know that they're formatted as you need them to be formatted, then we're golden. Another thing I want to show you is this. This is a separate frame that's sort of sitting out of the text thread. We could make this an inline item. So I'm going to do that and put a thing there and paste that in. Some weird things are happening because there's runaround on that, and we can take that off, particularly off the bottom so that the runaround doesn't happen at the bottom. But this is terrible, of course. In this case, I'm showing you how to inline a sidebar. What I'm showing you right now also applies to images as well. So this isn't totally working. What I often do when I want an image to be in the actual flow of the document is I create a new style sheet. And I'll call it image, let's just say, for demonstration purposes. The most important thing here in terms of formatting is the leading. This is the only thing that actually matters, actually. Setting that to auto is going to have a dramatic effect on what's happening here. So I'll click OK, and then I forgot to format it that. So setting it to auto means that it automatically goes as big as the image. So however long that image is, whatever depth that image is taking up is how much that space will take. It will take up that same amount of space. Before it was set to 16 point leading, which means that the image was sitting over the paragraph above. When I set that to auto, dramatic things happen. So let's take off the first line indent and then make that as wide as the text, and then maybe change how the layout is a little bit. And then there. So that looks a little bit better. A little bit better. I would say it's still a bit of an odd thing to have a sidebar right in the middle of the text, but this works for images as well. And then you could also do something like give it a little bit of space before so that it fits a bit better in that space, and a little bit of space after, and then redefine that style. And then there you go, Bob's your uncle. Putting images in line like this using auto leading is a really great idea. I'm going to undo this now because I want my sidebar to be an actual sidebar, so I can show you how to make that into an aside later. Okay, I've gone through lots of the things that I said I was going to go through. One more important thing. This book has a title and an author and a publisher. Presumably it has a copyright statement, although we know in the case of this book, I got it from the internet and there is no copyright statement. But we want to preserve some of that metadata in the ebook. And there's a place in InDesign where you can put your metadata so that it's saved there and it's in the archive of this file forever. So under File and File Info, there's, oh, don't go to the wrong page. Okay, file format info for this file that I've called formatted. So here we can put in some really basic metadata. Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie, and it is public domain. Usually you're probably going to select copyrighted and then type in the copyright statement here, or copy it from the copyright page. So don't get too fancy in this window. There's a lot more that can go on here, but the very basics of the metadata can be put in here and it will get retained in the ebook context. Okay, I think that's it for this video. The next video is going to get a little deeper, so brace yourself.